Shalom. This week's Torah portion is Parashat Vayigash, meaning, and he drew near, beginning in chapter 44 and verse 18 of the book of Genesis. The portion chronicles the reunion of Yosef with his brothers and father, a reconciliation which will bring the era of the forefathers to a close, as detailed in next week's Torah portion of Vayechi, the final portion of Bereshit. And through the descent of Yaakov and his family into the Egyptian darkness, the stage is now being set for the beginning of a new period in history, the onset of the Egyptian exile. As this intense drama between Yosef and his brothers advances towards its heated climax, the tension becomes almost unbearable. Could things get any worse? Benjamin has been caught with the viceroy's silver goblet in his satchel. And as Yehuda said at the close of last week's Torah portion of Miketz, what can we say to my Lord? How can we speak? And how can we justify ourselves? God has uncovered the sin of your servants. Here we are ready to be slaves to my Lord, both we and the one in whose hand the goblet was found. But Yosef says, no, I will take only Binyamin, with whom the goblet was found. So the brothers are devastated, thinking that they will have to return to Yaakov and tell him that his worst fears have come true. His beloved son Binyamin will not be returning. He's been taken as a slave. Yosef is gone, Shimon is gone, and now Binyamin, Yaakov will surely die, as Yehuda expresses here in verse 30. And now, if I come to your servant my father, and the youth is not with us, and his soul is bound up with his soul, it will happen that when he sees the youth is missing, he will die. The situation seemed hopeless, but the truth is, this family is no stranger to catastrophes. Ever since the saga of Yosef and his brothers began, back in chapter 37 in Parashat Vayigash, we have seen a family in crisis. Everybody knows that there can be a certain degree of dysfunction in the best of families. And throughout these portions, mistakes have been made. Yosef, his brothers, and even Yaakov himself have all made mistakes that have deepened the misunderstandings and caused more alienation and resentment. But one of the greatest lessons of our Parsha, for all of us and for all time, is that broken relationships can be healed. Indeed, this portion of Vayigash is the turning point in the story, and now begins the tikkun, the process of repair, of fixing these broken relationships. But open up your heart. To initiate and facilitate such repair requires a special sort of strength. Yosef never contemplated revenge, not even for a moment. All the subterfuge, all the ruse, and the meticulously planned setup, and the elaborate mind games that he played with his brothers, it was all about creating an opportunity to rectify the ancient enmity between the children of Leah and the children of Rachel, to bring about a perfect tikkun. This grand fixing was Yosef's plan all along, but it will require the participation of both sides in order to effect the tikkun of reconcilement. So firstly, in order to even approach tikkun, fixing, the sin has to be acknowledged. Already back in Parashat Miketz, the glow of the tikkun's potential began to shine when in chapter 42 the brothers said to one another, indeed, we are guilty concerning our brother, for we saw his heartfelt anguish when he pleaded with us, and we paid no heed. That is why this anguish has come upon us now. But now, in the powerful moment of truth, Yehuda, the leader of the brothers, representing the jealousy of the children of Leah that hated and sold Rachel's son Yosef, he now offers himself as the slave instead of Rachel's son Binyamin, saying, I will be your servant, and the youth should ascend with his brethren. Take me in his stead and send him home. Now, this is a powerful and really perfect aspect of the concept of tikkun, and it's the moment of proof that Yosef was waiting for, a demonstration that Leah's children would be willing to risk it all with selfless dedication in order to save Rachel's child. But again, this wasn't simply about testing them, it was about rectifying. And Yehuda's readiness was the perfect way to fix their previously having expressed those terrible words that we read in Parashat Vayigash when the brothers said to one another, now let us come and kill him. Here, Yehuda is ready to be enslaved in order to free Benjamin. So this tikkun is a classic example of midah keneged midah, measure for measure. But in order to heal a rift, both sides need to participate. Yosef also bore some responsibility for the situation's deterioration. His telling over his dreams to his brothers, dreams that they perceived foretold that he's going to rule over them, that they will bow down to him, and his bringing negative reports about his brothers' alleged behavior to their father, these were things that Yosef had to fix. So open up your heart in the deepest way, because this whole thing could have ended completely differently. Very badly, in fact, in tragedy. Had Yosef sought to avenge himself, the family could have been destroyed. Had Yosef felt that he never wanted to see any of them again, they would have perished in the famine. But instead, it was Yosef who selflessly provided for his brothers and their families and his father. His brothers' cruel actions caused Yosef to suffer terrible travail. By all standards, such treatment could have been an insurmountable trauma for him. Why wasn't it? How would any other person have handled this situation? And how would we have expected Yosef to handle that meeting? What would we have expected this meeting to be like? Any person who knows what Yosef has been through could have thought that when Yosef reveals himself, when he takes off his mask, so to speak, that his face would now become a mask of rage. Rage. Justifiable. So afraid were you of my dreams that you conspired to kill me? You attacked me and threw me into a pit of scorpions? You sold your brother for shoes? You bloodied my garments and fooled our poor father? Look what you've done to my life. You destroyed my life with your hatred. Look at my face. Who will give me back my years that you destroyed and took me away from my father and my home? From the age of 17 until now, I'm now 30 years old. Who will give me back those years? This is perhaps what we would have anticipated to happen at this meeting, because most people would not be able to forgive. In fact, most anyone else probably would have survived all those years by nursing thoughts of revenge and planning for that day like the Count of Monte Cristo. And not only would we have expected it, open up your hearts in the deepest way, this is what the brothers expected. This is what they themselves expected. Thus the Torah states that the moment that Yosef revealed himself, they could not speak because they were so totally shocked. They expected, at the very least, the harshest of rebuke. Actually, they expected revenge. But not only does Yosef not say one word of rebuke and not one harsh word, but what happens is the very opposite. He speaks softly. He calms them. He is the one who's been wrong, yet he appeases them. He cries. He tells them it wasn't you who sent me here, but God. He convinces them that they're not guilty. His forgiveness is total. He doesn't just forgive them. He feeds and provides for them, and unbelievably, stunningly unbelievably, over the next 17 remaining years of Yaakov's life, when Yosef is finally reunited with his father, he never even told his father one word of what really happened, how his brothers treated him, and how he really wound up in Egypt. Honestly, his forgiveness was so extreme that the brothers couldn't really believe that he forgave them. They thought it was an act, that he's refraining from avenging him out of respect for his father. So much so that as soon as Yaakov passed, as we shall read in next week's Parashat Vayigash in chapter 50, the brothers reminded Yosef that his father Yaakov gave orders that he should forgive them. Actually, Yaakov never said anything of the sort. He didn't even know the brothers were involved, but the brothers were so convinced that eventually the axe of Yosef's revenge would fall that they fabricated the story of Yaakov's words in desperation, in their panic, and their trepidation of Yosef. They thought, in Yosef's position of power, he could really do anything to them. Their ploy wasn't necessary. Neither was their concern. But as I said, to initiate and facilitate such repair requires a special sort of strength. So now open up your hearts deeper still. The brothers were shocked, and what they began to realize is what we begin to realize now, that the true nature of Yosef HaTzadik is beyond our comprehension. We already witnessed one reason why he's known as Yosef HaTzadik, the righteous Joseph, his most famous test. Day after day, for years, he withstood the incessant attempts of his master's wife to seduce him, until finally one day he was forced to flee, leaving his garment in her hands, demonstrating not only his character, his purity, but an amazing inner strength. Who ever heard of a young man in the prime of his youth exhibiting such impeccable self-control? And now we see another level of Yosef's greatness. Pardon me, but to quote Pharaoh himself, is there to be found a man such as this in whom the Spirit of God is present? It's truly difficult to comprehend the level of this person. After all that he endured and suffered, all that was done to him, his brothers want to kill him, they sell him into slavery, his virtue is tried beyond belief. He doesn't recall to his brothers a single word of it. He doesn't even exhibit a trace of passive aggression. He cries and consoles and comforts them and tells them it was all part of God's plan. The Holy Ramchal, in his classic Mesilat Yesharim, The Path of the Just, teaches us that desire for vengeance is just that, a natural desire like all other desires. For a person who feels that they've been wronged, revenge is a reason to live. And for such an individual to withstand the temptation for revenge demonstrates a remarkable level of self-control. Such a person is truly strong, for freeing oneself from this desire, forgoing the opportunity to get even, but to be able to move on and not obsess and look forward to that moment of settling the score. That takes a great effort. Almost, one could say, superhuman. But Torah teaches us that we are not to become slaves to our emotions, that it's within our power to control our feelings. Torah disdains self-indulgence. And thus Leviticus 19 commands us, "You shall not take revenge and you shall not bear a grudge." Basically, another example of Torah commanding us what we may not allow ourselves to feel. Our sages explain the difference between revenge and bearing a grudge. Revenge, like everyone knows, means getting back at someone. But even bearing a grudge is forbidden. Bearing a grudge means not to say to someone, "Sure, I'll do this for you," even though when I asked you for the same thing, you wouldn't help me. "Sure, please come to my party," even though you didn't invite me to yours. But you see, I'm not like you. There, I taught him a lesson. Torah enjoins us not to hold on to the hurt. But this is not a simple thing, and the Ramchal writes, in his words in Mesilat Yesharim, that this is such a basic human emotion that it's so difficult for a person to overcome it, it would only be easy for an angel. But yet, Torah commands us, so that means that as hard as it appears, such an attribute of foregoing the desire for revenge is within our reach to achieve. Now open up your heart deeper than ever before in your whole life. So, was Yosef an angel, or was he an ordinary human being? Maybe the Torah's lesson is that a real ordinary human being is greater than an angel. Maybe being a real human being is what it really means to be a hero. You know, stories of heroes have always been an integral part of world culture and literature. And in today's popular culture, the fascination with superheroes is greater than ever. So what is it about superheroes that people find so attractive? Well, for one thing, they're not real. This is precisely what people find inspiring. Superheroes are something bigger than ourselves. They represent someone we're not, or someone that can do things that we can't. They're more than human. They rise above the limitations, or should I say, the challenges Hashem places in our path of the world of humans. One sociologist writes, quote, "The superhero gives us someone to believe in, and the beauty of watching them in action is that the viewer isn't pressured to actually become a superhero because, well, that's impossible," unquote. So basically, the superhero portrays someone to believe in, since I can't believe in myself, and I could never become a superhero. I could never confront and best the evil the way my hero does. But the truth is that the greatest evil of all is what dwells inside each of us. That's the evil we're summoned to face and overcome. In their scintillating wisdom, our sages saw the spin and summed it up succinctly in Pirkei Avot, chapter of the Fathers, with their statement, "Who is mighty? One who conquers his own inclination." As the verse states, Proverbs 16:32, "He who is slow to anger is better than a strong man, and a master of his passions is better than the conqueror of a city." Everyone is looking for a superhero with superhuman powers. But here's our Yosef, who faced down and conquered himself. A real-life superhero doesn't need a cape and tights. His powers are not supernatural. He conquers the negativity and evil in the world by subduing himself. He strives to perfect his own humanity, to make it worthy of the divine image. Yosef strove to perfect not only his relationship with God, but even more importantly, his relationship with others, even those who have hurt him. This is why he is consistently known as Yosef HaTzadik, the righteous Joseph, a true hero, who perfected his very human powers to become a superhuman. Thank you for watching this week's Jerusalem Lights Torah portion, and thank you for being a part of the Jerusalem Lights community. May we all learn to emulate Yosef, and with Hashem's help, may we reveal the true greatness within ourselves. Shabbat Shalom.